Erik Clemons. We are here today celebrating 15 years of your service with ConnCAT and then ConnCORP, becoming the joint CEO of both. We are here in the manifestation of a dream that started with you and with thought partners 15 years ago. Talk to me a bit about your story. How do we get from there to here?
Yeah, it has been quite a journey, and you have been a good part of that journey. And so for us to be able to have this conversation, I would have no other person talk with me about this than you. 15 years, I'm 60 years old right now, Mercy. And so this has been a quarter of my life that I've committed myself to this work and to my people and to the people who do this work with me. And so as you mentioned, kind of the continuum of this thing, starting as a CEO and then CEO and president, and now CEO of 2 organizations that I co-founded, has been just absolutely incredible and quite a blessing, not only for me, but for my children, for the story of my life. And so what a way to commemorate this 15 years than to have a conversation with my friend. I feel incredible. Not only do I feel like I've achieved something, but I feel like I've been called to do something. And I answered that call. And that's the most important feeling for me, right? Answering the call that God has placed on me for the express purpose of helping others. That's what this has been all about for me, right? And everything else has happened for me. But the centerpiece of my life in this work was the fact that I've been called to help people, and I've done so.
Absolutely. So let's stay there on the topic of how you get to your calling. A lot of people don't know about the history, how Erik Clemons, the visionary leader here in New Haven, becomes the visionary leader that they have come to know and love and appreciate. Walk us through that backstory.
Yeah, I don't think most people know, maybe in New Haven, but not across the state, that, I was a postal worker. And I was a postal worker for 16 years, yet I had a dream that was in me that I wanted to contribute to the world in a different way. And although working for the United States Post Office was a noble job, right? And it allowed me to support my family, my late wife, and my 4 daughters. There was always something in me that was yearning to do something different. And I would dare say something more in terms of my contribution to the world. And so what I chose to do after 12 years of being a mail handler in the post office was I went to school. And so part of the process and the journey for me was to be a bit more educated. One, for myself, because I wanted to know more. And not just know more about academic discourse, but know more about myself. And secondly, and people laugh at this, but it's true, I wanted to understand how to fill out the FAFSA form, so when it was time for my daughters to go to college, I would be well prepared. And so I wanted to be ready for that. And so I went to school. I started out at Housatonic Community College, just taking classes, and I took sociology classes because I knew I would like it. And so I took sociology classes, and I learned that I had some ability, right? Some academic or intellectual ability. And I liked the intellectual pursuit of class and college and reading, because I've always been a reader. And so, once I learned that I had some ability, and I convinced myself that I did, I then transferred, because we moved to New Haven, I transferred to Southern Connecticut State University. And it was there, in a larger setting, I started being challenged with a lot of rigor around writing and reading and analysis of what I was reading and writing. My dream was always to be a teacher. I wanted to teach young children who looked like me, who were living in the conditions I was able to overcome. That was my dream, to help them and their families. And also help them and demonstrate my story in terms of how I was able to release myself or liberate myself from poverty, quite frankly. And so I also wanted to work in community, because I've always thought about myself and my work in terms of being politically active, being socially active, and delving into education, because I always felt like those were really critical stools of the civil rights movement. And so I quit my job. You know, my late wife basically supported the entire family because I was chasing a dream, and quite frankly, she believed in my dream probably more than I did. I left the post office after 16 years and really pursued a dream of contributing to the world in a different way. Before leaving my job, I did an internship at an organization here called LEAP. I was actually invited to come to one of their fundraisers by then Shay Dawson, who was the executive director of LEAP. And so I actually called out of work at the post office and went and played a round of golf with folks who were involved in LEAP. When I walked into the clubhouse before we went and played golf, I sat down to a guy because it was the only seat left before we played, as I mentioned. And his name was Andy Boone. Andy's still here in New Haven. He's a dear friend. And he and I began to talk. And he was asking me, like, what is your affiliation with LEAP? And I said, well, you know, I'm an older student, non-traditional student at Southern, and I'm writing a thesis on the organization as I'm poised to graduate in next year. And so, you know, LEAP having very little diversity on their board at the time, I got in touch, he got me in touch with a woman named Judy Clark and asked if I would be if I were interested in being a board member of this organization. And I absolutely said yes, because I love my time there with some really incredible people who are now very close friends of mine. And so I served on the board there. I think it was the first board I ever served on. And I had no idea what I was doing as a board member, so I would listen a lot. And so there was a moment where we at LEAP needed an executive director, and the board came to me and asked me if I would be interested in running the organization, right? So now I was a board member, I think, for 2 years, and now I'm being asked to run this really pivotal organization in New Haven. And I didn't really know how to run an organization, but I did know and understand the symptoms of the people who were coming for service there, not only the children and the youth, but the families, because I grew up in that. I think I did rather well. It was really rough in the beginning because I was just really trying to understand how to run an organization and didn't really understand the enormity of the organization. It was very large.
And I think that's something that is notable about you, and I'm interested in knowing if you agree with it, is you have an entrepreneurial sense about you. Even if the organization is established that you come to lead, or there's an idea there, it's that entrepreneurialism that you bring to every space. Have you felt that?
I remember you saying to me one day, you said, Erik, you know, once this thing you're doing is over, you're gonna go find something else to do. Do you remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that.
And I never thought about myself that way, and I think that's entrepreneurial in and of itself.
It is.
And so, yeah, I do feel that sense of entrepreneurial spirit, right? The ways in which I can look at something and identify the very power of that thing,
right.
You know, and that doesn't just come from me or experience, that comes from I think, a spiritual sense.
Right.
And I never thought about it that way when I was younger, but I do now because I know where that comes from. So anyway, yeah, so there's that entrepreneurial part of me that is always trying to find ways to improve upon something, or to find ways or different ways and deeper ways to help people. And this idea of ConnCAT came to New Haven by way of the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. I then was asked to meet with Bill Strickland, who is to me at the time was the preeminent social entrepreneur in the country. and he was replicating or scaling his model, Manchester Bidwell model, which was really about workforce development training as well as arts training. And so it came this idea of bringing that model to New Haven. And so I now am meeting with Bill Strickland and Carlton Highsmith, and we are talking for the next 2.5 hours to 3 hours about ways in which we would save the world. And I left out of that meeting feeling incredibly inspired by my conversation with these two black men who, in a moment of our conversation, I was looking at them and listening to them and saying to myself, I could be them. I could be, in terms of the magnitude of what they have contributed to the world. You know what, I could do that.
There's a great deal of gumption in that.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from. And I knew actually nothing about them at the time, absolutely nothing.
And I imagine them not much about you.
Exactly, other than what they heard. I heard about Bill Strickland, I heard about Carlton, but I didn't know them personally. And this was my first time, my second time meeting with Bill, but my first time meeting Carlton. And so I walked out of there not very interested in ConnCAT at all, quite frankly. But I was interested in having the conversation with them about whatever it is that they wanted to talk with me about. And so after a couple of weeks, I got a call and said, Bill was really interested in me building and running what is now ConnCAT. I told them no, because I wasn't interested in leaving my job. Quite frankly, I was scared to leave my job because, again, as I mentioned earlier, I had left my job at the post office to chase a dream. And so I was fatally scared to go to my wife and tell her I was going to leave another job.
Right, and this is within, what, 2 years?
2 years,
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And I didn't feel it here yet, to be honest with you. And so I think they did a national search. They came back to me and asked if I would reconsider running ConnCAT, building and running it. My wife gave me permission to do so.
The permission is important.
Absolutely. I was not going to do it without her consent. June 1st, 2011 was my first day at ConnCAT. And just now having to build it, the infrastructure and the content and the programming, all of those things, and hiring people. It was an exciting time for me. And again, doing something I had no idea how to do, because I had never started an organization from nothing, from vision. And we opened officially in June of 2012. Everything that I was doing at the time, in my mind, I had already done it. That I had played out my life while sorting mail. I was playing out my life in what could be possible and what could be achieved for me. And so it just felt like the natural evolution of things once I got there, because I felt like I've already done it.
Yeah, yeah. And isn't that truly what entrepreneurialism is? It's not that you have the answers, it's that you're committed to finding them.
Yeah, well, yes. And what I've realized now, not only just professionally and personally, but the questions become the answer.
Right. So you are now charged with leading an organization that had never existed. You have the responsibility to create the programming, you have the model from Bill Strickland, but the new responsibility is adapting it for the needs of New Haven. How do you take on that charge?
Absolutely. And so, Bill and his team had done feasibility here locally, like with geographic industry, and with Yale New Haven Hospital in particular, to identify what is their immediate need, what is market relevant, and what is their need for the next 15 to 20 years. And so at the time, Marna Borgstrom was the CEO of Yale Health Systems, and Kevin Mayat, who's still on the ConnCAT board, was the head of their HR. And so they indicated that they will need phlebotomists, people who draw blood, and medical billers. And so with that intel, we designed training programs that were retrofitted to the needs of folks here in New Haven. And then the arts, we had an arts after school program as well as an arts summer program. And so we had a MOU with the New Haven Public Schools. At the time, Superintendent Reggie Mayo was fully on board. And at the time, Hamden's Board of Education, their superintendent, Fran Rabinowitz, was fully on board. And so we would use the arts as a vehicle for academic achievement. And mind you, during this time, 15 years ago, Connecticut had the widest achievement gap in the country, and New Haven was falling sorely behind in terms of the districts in this state in their performance in reading and math. And so we use the arts as a way to really apprehend the minds of young people and make them think differently about school. It became very successful from the beginning. And some folks were really talking to me and not very happy with the fact that I had not addressed the issue of reentry. Folks who are coming home from incarceration to New Haven daily with no skills, with no place to live, with no money, of course, and no job. And so, you know, at the time, and maybe still now, Yale New Haven Hospital was not hiring folks who had been incarcerated. And at the same time, then Governor Malloy had kind of created this Second Chance initiative. I'm sure you remember, being a journalist. And so I started thinking about, like, how could we engage folks who are coming home from incarceration? And we looked at ways in which to do that, whether it be have an automotive training or what have you. And we decided on culinary arts because culinary arts is more forgiving than any other trade or any other type of employment to folks who have been incarcerated. And when I say forgiving, I mean not holding their past against them. Really allowing in earnest a second chance for people. And what I learned, more forgiving, a lot of folks who have been incarcerated were learning how to cook while in prison. So there was a skill that was already being cultivated. And so that being the case, I was able to raise a significant amount of money to build out a culinary school. And 30 to 40% of the trainees who would come to that culinary school would be people who had been incarcerated at some point in their lives. And it was that program, quite frankly, that really put ConnCAT on the map nationally. One, because of the rationale behind the program. Two, because of this incredible commercial kitchen and teaching kitchen also that we built downstairs in ConnCAT, where ConnCAT was originally upstairs in the building that we're in now.
So we're talking about the 2010s, and at the time here in Connecticut, we have reportedly 50,000 failing schools throughout the state. The rate of recidivism is about 1 to 3, right? And we are talking about a time where the need is greater than the resources.
Yeah.
You become a key player, not just here in New Haven, but in the state for finding those resources and allocating them exactly to those needs. Where do you find that skill set?
Growing up poor. And always having to get to the next day. You know, the way I had to grow up, for me, it was if I got to the next day, then I won. Because if I get to the next day, then I have a shot. And so being able to hold those stories within me, and as I meet with people to talk about the issues, what I say resonates, because I'm just not talking about data points. I'm talking about my life because I've lived what I'm saying to people. And as much as there was the issues around education, Mercy, as much as there were the issues around poverty, as much as there were the issues around incarceration, and those issues have persisted. What I realized, though, the biggest issue for us in our communities is the lack of hope. It was, to me, it wasn't just about the lack of resources or these other things, these social determinants. It was about the dearth of hope that people had. And when people stop dreaming and stop hoping, they begin to suffer. So that's what I was speaking to. I was speaking to the dreams in people. And not only the people who we would be coming to serve, but the people who would hopefully be an ally in this work that I endeavored to do through ConnCAT.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in the projects in Norwalk, Connecticut. And during that time, you know, I was born in 1966. So, you know, when I was born, the civil rights movement was happening. You know, being at least 5 to 6 years old, where I started thinking critically about what I was seeing and what I was hearing from the people who were around me. And it was all about Black power. It was all about Black Panthers and Africanism and all those things that were cues for me to let me know that I was a part of a community. I was raised by literally raised by a community center. After school, weekends, sometimes during the day, if there was no school, I would be in that community center in the Carver Foundation. And so at the time, my mom and dad, they worked. And so they worked later than when we came home from school. So there were periods of time where
latchkey
we were latchkey kids, being looked out for and being nurtured by a community of people who were in that community center or who was in the projects, knowing our situation. And our situation was really no different than most young people who lived in those projects. By the time I became 13, 14 years old, my dad had severe mental illness that became more manifested and pronounced the older he got, of course. After about a year of him really deteriorating mentally, to the point of talking to himself and not going to work, never coming out his bedroom, we ended up leaving Norwalk and leaving him there. And we ended up moving to Stanford, which was in close proximity to my mom's job. And you know, I talk about this a lot. You know, we lived in a rooming house for folks who were coming home from incarceration for the most part, or young people who were pregnant and, you know, just really trying to find their way.
Transitionary housing.
Exactly. Thank you. Transitionary housing. And so that was, you know, I came and was nurtured and developed by a lovely, beautiful, although projects didn't matter to me. I knew I was loved. And now we are living in this room, and I had no idea where my father was or what happened to him. I just knew that he changed drastically and we left him. And so as time went on, my brother, and you know, he kind of took the wrong lane a little bit. And in June of 1988, he was shot and killed in another housing project. And so, and when he was shot and killed, I was actually talking with him. You know, he was next to me. And I was in that housing project coming to pick my sister up, my older sister, who was 7 months pregnant at the time. And so I was picking her up to bring her back home, and my brother Sean was there, and he and I were just having a conversation, just catching up. And you know, all of a sudden you hear all these guns blasting. And it was so hot that evening. It had to be about 11 o'clock at night. And instead of getting under my car with me, he ran. And he got shot. He got shot in the back of the head. And so I crawled to the parking lot where he was, because it is so incredibly strange. Where he was laying was right under a light in the parking lot. And I knew him because I saw a sneaker. I knew it was him. And so I crawled to him, hoping that he was kind of playing dead because, or it wouldn't be that severe. And so I grabbed him by his feet, and someone came and grabbed him under the shoulder. We put him in the back of my car, and I drove him to the hospital. I tell that story, and it's in all its graphics, because I want to convey to people all the time how serious this work is for me. Right? It is not just about creating ways in which we can manufacture or conjure hope and facilitate dreams, but it is about redemption for me as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do I find ways to redeem myself and my brother's life? So that's why this work is personal.
Does it sometimes feel as though you're living for both of you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm living for both of us, he and I. I'm living for those who didn't make it out of the crack epidemic. Because mind you, our communities were being hit by crack and AIDS at the same time.
At the same time. And in 1988, you have Stanford, Hartford, Norwalk, New Haven, Bridgeport, all ravaged by the same two epidemics. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And what was really interesting was the physical effects of both. You just didn't know which one had what. Or sometimes people had both. They were suffering from AIDS while at the same time addicted to crack.
Right. Or had it in the family.
That's right. That's right. And so I do that work for those who didn't make it through that.
New Haven truly understanding where you came from allows an understanding of the importance of this work. The word to me that comes for this phase is realization, right? I think often folks refer to you as a visionary leader, right? I think a skill set, perhaps a talent maybe, right, is the way you are able to realize more than what's before you. And if I can think about the pathways for you, for young people here in New Haven, for adults re-entering society, that pathway from trauma to triumph. ConnCAT has been a major part of that story for many people. And now ConnCORP is another chapter in that story.
Mind you, what I failed to mention was when the idea of ConnCAT came to New Haven, I had heard about it and I got a call. It's a true story. I got a call from a friend, dear friend still, Leon Bailey.
My name is Leon Bailey and I work at the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. And we have been supporting the work and the vision of ConnCAT for over 20 years.
And so I went down to his office and Leon is, Leon, he is full of ideas, right? And he has that entrepreneurial spirit as well.
We needed it here in New Haven. The challenge was always finding a leader for the work locally. But it wasn't until Erik and Colton Highsmith got involved that it actually got some traction. After the formation of ConnCAT, Erik and I would have a number of conversations, and one conversation we had, he came to my office at the foundation, and I shared with him a vision that I had for ConnCORP.
And I sat in his office, he took out a piece of paper,
and I pulled out a little slip of paper from my desk, because I had been thinking about it.
and it said, ConnCORP. So now here I am, 3 to 4 years later in his office, where he hands me this paper that says ConnCORP in a framing of what ConnCORP would do.
He pushed it back at me and says, look, you better put your name on that.
I said, put your name on this. Because if this thing happens, I want him to get credit for it. He put his name on it, he gave it back to me. I took it and I put it in my drawer at ConnCAT. And it stayed in my drawer for a couple of years. And I would take it out ever so often and I would look at it and I was like, man, how can we do this?
Mentally prepared.
Yeah, I was getting myself prepared to do it. because in my mind, like we were actually already doing it. Didn't know how, but we were doing it. And so, because the culinary school, this is important, because the culinary school was so successful, those funders, especially one particular family, came to me and said, Eric, we are so aligned in terms of your mission, your ability to actually do what you said you're going to do, and our mission as a family foundation, that we want to set aside more money to make greater impact. I thought of ConnCORP.
This building and this iteration is an illustration of speaking something into the universe such that it comes into life.
That really was the beginning of ConnCORP. It wasn't my idea, it was Leon Bailey's idea. However, he was called, in my opinion, to have the idea. I was called to implement it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So much of your story is that of shepherding ideas, shepherding resources, shepherding funds, really putting not just yourself, but other people in the right places, and bringing in thought partners to support that work as well. ConnCORP is now 8 years in. ConnCORP has now met another need, and that need specifically, as you and I spoke in 2020, coining a phrase that had then become this movement for restorative economic development.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
That's right.
Meeting entrepreneurial needs, meeting the needs of economic development here in the Black community. Talk to me about the work you've done so far.
Yeah, I'll talk about, our first project was to purchase the Seatown building on Dixwell Plaza. And thereby we would renovate that 20,000 square foot building, which had laid dormant for almost a decade. And we would bring what was called the News Cafe. So very much like what we're doing right now, we would do on Dixwell Avenue, where the entire community could be a part of it just by watching it, or kind of coming in and listening to maybe celebrities or news folks. It was a great idea by that came from a guy named Mark Carter, who was a journalist as well. And we took the idea to the Mayor Toni Harp at the time. And, she was very, very nice, but at the same time, very firm about the fact that we had not thought deep enough or wide enough about the impact that we could make, in this one building, thinking this one building and this project would turn this community around in terms of economic infrastructure and all the things we endeavored to do at ConnCORP. She's like, that's not going to work. She said the city has had a plan for Dixwell Plaza for quite some time and has not executed in that plan. I don't know why. So they shared the plan with us, and we took elements of that plan that the city had. And we started then put together a property acquisition strategy, and as well as started really thinking about master planning the entire site. So this was our first kind of go at what we could do in terms of addressing poverty in Dixwell especially. And while that is happening, of course, there's so much more needs that had to be addressed in Dixwell and Newhallville especially. And so, for me, being a part of the social contract, personally and professionally, I think it is important for us to meet those needs, or at minimum address needs of the people that we say we're going to help. And so, so while we're thinking about doing this large-scale development project on Dixwell Plaza, we're also thinking about entrepreneurship and ways to affect Black-owned businesses. We're also thinking about ways to bring ourselves within the real estate game, for lack of a better term, in New Haven, especially in Dixwell and Newhallville. And it was a game in a sense that there were people who were not indigenous to these two communities, two Black historic communities, who are not indigenous to these communities and purchasing all the properties and then not investing in those properties, just letting them sit to deteriorate almost, but waiting for the market to go up. And so we want to address that as well. And so we have that, and then there's a need for food in our communities. Fresh food, not corner store food. And so we wanted to address that. And so we're now looking at holistically ways in which we can affect change while at the same time conjure hope into communities, into these two communities. Mind you, I think this is the most important thing. This whole thing started with a phlebotomy program. And so, and what we haven't talked about, which I think is really a hugely important piece that we see all the time, but it goes undiscussed, is the people who would come and do this work with me. And where were they coming from? And what was their bedside manner as it relates to impoverished communities?
Talk to me about some of those people.
I absolutely love what I've been able to do, what I've been able to achieve. But I love the people I've done it with more than what I've been able to do. Someone like Opal Harmon, who came as my executive assistant, or Steve Driffin, who's a playwright, who has these stories in his head. Jakiva Morgan, who's just an absolute dynamo, or Daniel Hunt. You know, I think about his story, or someone like Andrea Taylor, or I think about somebody like Stephanie Mallard, who has been at ConnCAT the longest. We call her the day one. There's just countless stories of people who have had opportunity and have seized those opportunity. And all these people, you know, I'm naming these people who, and some people I'm not naming, but I feel the same way about them. These are profound examples of what could happen if people are just given opportunity. These are really important people to me, who have done this work with me. I have not done anything alone, but what I'm gracious about and what I'm thankful for is that even if they don't even understand what I'm saying to them, or the things that I'm asking them to do, because, you know, they just don't see it. They don't see what I see. They do it anyway. And I'm just very thankful for that. Yeah.
Whew. Feels like a lifetime ago.
I was employee number one, and we were launching this big new company with a big vision.
When I first started, there were 3 employees.
Very small team, just a few of us.
But little did I know, as I stayed on board and we started acquiring more and more of the Dixon Plaza and things started to grow, it's been a journey, a good journey.
I always believed in what ConnCAT was doing, so it was an easy transition for me. So I just like, yes, let's do it.
When Erik offered me the opportunity, I was very happy, very blessed.
Erik is so inspirational. You just feel good going to work and being in his presence.
He leads in a way that he models the way. And that has helped me in my leadership journey tremendously.
This journey with Erik for the past 13 years have shaped my life. He is someone who turns something ordinary into something extraordinary.
It's really been an honor to work with him and watch him bring this dream to fruition. It's really been an honor.
With Erik, he's an encourager, he's a supporter. He creates spaces and he unites people together. Erik's like, look, I believe in you. I believe that you are called to do this work along with me. So come along for the ride and let's get it done.
What Erik has done with the help of others is create something far greater than ever imagined when he and I were first talking about the concept of ConnCORP.
So 15 years, a milestone, a career here in New Haven, serving these two organizations that serves as just a quarter of your life, but is equal in the amount of time where in a previous life you were sorting our mail, perhaps even delivering it to homes here in New Haven. You went from in the community in one way to in the community another way. Is yours a story of legacy, of leadership, Or is it a story that is still being written?
My story, I believe, at its core, is really about what could happen for someone and the blessings that come for someone who chooses to commit their life to helping other people. That's the bottom line. I have done well in life, and I will say that. I've done well in life in large part because I chose to commit to help people. That is it. There's always, and I talk about this a lot, there's always this tension that one has between self-preservation and self-discovery. And I believe that tension is why, or the choice made within that tension is why things have not changed much. It is why I think racism persists. I think it is why poverty persists and all the ills of society persist. Because when one has a choice to address that tension and choose to discover something about themselves, they choose not to do so. They choose to preserve themselves and preserve their identity. Because what ends up happening is when you choose self-discovery, you realize that you are no different than the people you strategize to stay away from every day. You're no different than them. Right? You have to, there's a moment in life where we all have to reconcile with ourselves, and when doing so, I think it shifts one's heart posture and thereby their identity. And I've been very blessed to be able to iterate that all the time, to interrogate myself, to ensure that I am helping all people. And the greatest joy that I've had doing this work is one, the people that I've worked with. Two, the community here in Dixwell and Newhallville especially, that have allowed me to trespass on their sacred ground. And three, the incredible people that I have met who have become friends and family to me of all races, who I would not have met otherwise had I not been doing this work. Those are the greatest joys for me.
And Erik, as we close, I'm going to ask you a question that you reminded me. I asked you a question. I didn't remember that question. So I'll ask you one that I remember. And I'll reshape it for the milestone, of today's conversation.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for the ConnCAT story?
I want to recall something, and you and I didn't know each other that well. You have become part of my family, in these years. And I remember walking into the Graustein Memorial Fund, and I had met you prior to that in Dr. Mayo's office.
That's right.
Right? I think you were coming back or going to Morocco or something like that.
Just regular travel.
Okay, gotcha. And so I see you a couple months, maybe a year later, in the Graustein Memorial Fund, and again, I don't really know you. And I say, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" And you say, "Erik, who's telling the ConnCAT story?" And I said to you, "Hello, how are you?" Because, you jumped right into to the business. But that question stayed with me. It really did. And, ConnCAT and ConnCORP has grown immensely. I mean, immensely. I think the story is going to be told so many ways you know? And so I don't know who would be responsible for the story, but I do know that it's important that whoever's talking about it, they should have earned the right to tell the story. So you have to earn the story. And so whoever earns the story should feel responsible for telling the story and telling it correctly, you know? And my hope is whoever's telling the story, that they're inspiring hope and facilitating dreams in the people who need that, whether they be impoverished people or folks of affluence, that we all need inspiration. We all need a level of hope. We all need something to point our hearts towards.
I am so blown away by being in this space that it's not even funny. Kudos to Erik.